Hey, what's going on, softball fans? Thanks for coming back and checking out another episode of the Going Yard podcast. Today we have Kiki Baldassari on the line with us, not on the phone. Kiki, nice to meet you, and I'm glad you're on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I've been watching your podcast. You guys have amazing people on here, and this is something that was really cool when you guys reached out. That I was really excited to be a part of it.
Awesome, I'm glad.
We appreciate it. We followed you for a while. You're not too far away up in Jersey, and we thought that you could share some great insight, being a facility owner and all those things, and so many things that you do that I think you could touch on for our listeners to follow, whether it's the players, the parents, or the coaches. So we appreciate you making time. We know you should be a lot busier this time of the day probably than you currently are. So we thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
We always like to start kind of with your softball story growing up and what it was like. We've had some softball coaches, players come on and say they had to start out playing t-ball because they didn't have softball, or it was slow pitch until they were 10, and all these different stories to get to where they got to. So what was softball like growing up for you, and when did you really get serious about it?
Yeah, I grew up in Denville, New Jersey, which had a great rec program. But really no travel ball, no like traveling to other neighboring towns and playing, better competition. I guess you're constantly just playing kids that you went to school with, which is fun, but you always wanted something extra. And I voiced this to my dad at one point when I was 10. I was like, why doesn't Denville have this travel ball program? Why do we just have rec? And I remember him like sitting there making a few phone calls, and he goes, we're going to make a travel program because you're right. Denville should have a travel program. And he became the founder of the Denville Blue Devils, which is so cool. And they're still going today. So to grow up with the Denville Blue Devils and to have my dad like coaching and founding, and then he ended up being the state commissioner. Like he went so far and beyond, just to allow me and my sister to have, a space where we can compete against other towns was amazing. So that was really cool. I, got to high school, and, the Denville Blue Devils and the Rockaway Rampage actually combine. So, you're competing against these girls since you were 8 years old, and then you kind of find yourself going to the same high school. So it is like fun, and, it is competitive because you've been playing them for so long. We made it to high school, and, I got on the team and had a good experience there. I was a right-handed, scrappy kid. I was quick. I was in the infield, and, I wanted to change my game. I wanted to be more serious about it. I wasn't sure if I wanted to, advance in college with softball or track. I was between a few sports that I wanted to do. I was really into track, and I had an experience where, it kind of fell through for me. I did a 10-second hurdle race. I was like 55 hurdles. So if you flinch wrong, you're
right.
done the race. And I had this moment where, I had some coaches watching, and I false started, and I got known as like the kid who's gonna choke in a big situation. So I was like, how do I be elite in softball now? Because softball is my passion. I want to kind of pursue softball. So I went to my, high school coach. I said, what do I have to do? And he said, well, for starters, you need to be a slapper because you're fast as hell. You need to be slapping. You need to go to the outfield. You need to change your entire game because you're average, and, you can be great if you, change it up a little bit. And I said, okay, that's more than a little, but I'll completely changed it. And, I went to him and I said, what's next? And he said, get on a team that you're going to see, college coaches are going to see you. And I said, sure, I'll do it. And so I did. And I tried out for 5+ teams. I didn't make any of them because I was figuring myself out. I was figuring out how to be a slapper, figuring out how to go to the outfield. So I think that I faced a lot of adversity, in the college recruiting process. It was tough to get on that team. I finally did. And yeah, I mean, that was a tough period because I was like, do I belong here? Is this something that I should be doing? Am I good enough to play collegiately? It became this weird thing and weird mindset that I had to kind of go through in high school. Yeah.
So I have to ask, if you don't mind, I'm sure, I don't know if he'll mind or not, but what was the name of your high school softball coach?
Yeah, Keith Heineman. He is absolutely amazing guy.
I just want to say, Keith, for every coach listening right now, she came with some aspiration to move on, to get better, he said, well, you're fast, you need to learn to slap. These are things that like your kids need to hear. And that is so awesome. He put you in the right direction. And you know, there's a lot of coaches that have all the answers, but don't give any of them. Don't give the right ones, I guess. And I think that is so crucial for you. I mean, you know, track was what you wanted to do. And then when softball was the next best thing, okay, well, how do I get better? So from you, as a student, asking those questions is awesome for one thing. Like, how do I get better? How do I be noticed? But as for your coach, Keith, well done, sir.
Yeah. And it's awesome because me and Keith actually, you know, I coached a 12U team and his daughter's on it and I was coaching side by side with him. So it was really cool to, you know, bring it full circle at the end because he was such a big part of my, you know, youth and, you know, growing into, you know, taking softball seriously and to, you know, just stand side by side with him and coach his daughter who was like born when I was in high school. It was really cool. It was a fun thing. Yeah.
Awesome.
Now, I mean, what I love about it is you faced adversity. And in this day and age, a lot of kids, it's easy to quit and just walk away. Like, it's easier to give up than it is to realize that you need to fix things or you need to get better. Where does that motivation come from? And how do you convince athletes that you work with now to understand that? Because I don't know if all coaches out there really have a good understanding of how to do that, as opposed to, well, you're not good enough, you don't do this, you don't do that, with no real way to fix it. I think that's a big issue out there in coaching these days, it seems like.
Yeah. You know, it is, you do find yourself as a coach kind of putting a lot of time into the athletes where you're like, you know, this kid has potential. I'm going to throw my energy into this kid. And then a lot of other kids get thrown to the side, but I view those kids as kind of a blank canvas on like, how can I paint this picture? How can I be responsible and, you know, help this kid grow? And, you know, being a slapping coach, I get those blank canvases. I get those kids that are coming into my cage that are day one on the left side of the batter's box. And those kids are honestly the most fun kids for me because I get to kind of, it is like starting a fresh painting, and those kids are fun. And then you get to watch them fully progress and, you know, sign a deal with the college, and you get to say, you know, they were with me day one. We did that together. That was cool. So I think that not taking that for granted, you know, those kids that are a little bit lower first level.
Now, having gone through the recruiting process, there's a lot of kids right now kind of trying to figure out how to start that. You know, what if they're not making the right moves? Looking back at it now, hindsight 2020, is there anything in that recruiting process that you would have changed today? Or, you know, how was that experience like? How was it? And was there anything that you would do differently if you had to do it again?
Yeah. You know, I'm the oldest in my family. My younger sister went through the recruiting process after me. So I was kind of that like guinea pig. I was kind of the experiment on what's it going to be like. I was really late to start, you know, trying to get on a team took a lot of my time away, like the prime recruiting years. I started pretty much recruiting and getting recruited, I would say, end of my sophomore year in high school, junior years, trying to get on college lists. I didn't really know what I wanted in a school, so I had that wide open too. I didn't know where I wanted to go. I didn't have a target list that I tell athletes to make now, so that they can just kind of dive into not communicating. I was communicating with so many coaches because I had no idea what I wanted, so I couldn't keep up with it. You know, you want to kind of narrow it down a little bit to like maybe 15, 20 schools so you can almost put a lot more time into them. And I didn't know that back then. And I was really nervous to play in front of coaches. And I think that mental aspect is something that I wish I would have known, that, you know, they're humans. I coached in college and I'm a human and I'm not scary, I don't think. So, you know, to kind of view it that way too is something that I wish I would have known, that it is this like stressful process, but knowing the basics would have taken a lot of stress and anxiety away from me in that time.
So when you got to college, you know, one thing I like to ask is, what is the biggest challenge you had? Was it time management? Was it weightlifting? Was it nutrition? What was the biggest thing that was like the hardest adjustment you had to make? Because it's very different for everyone depending on where they're kind of at in their bodies, in their development, and where they're at in the maturity?
Yeah. I was really shy. So I think that, that was a big part of me that had to grow and had to, mature that part of me. I was very quiet on the field. I was thrown into center field, leadoff batter immediately. So I had to kind of figure out how to communicate with my teammates. Center field is viewed as this leadership role where you need to be communicating, you need to be talking. And I wasn't. I was so quiet out there. I had teammates yelling at me like, you need to speak, like you need to do something. You see the whole field, like you need to step up as a teammate. And, those things that, I would not be doing this podcast if I was back then freshman year. This is something that is totally would have been out of my comfort zone, even to just give a softball lesson or run a clinic. And I look at where I was that freshman year to kind of like how far I've came now. And that freshman year was crucial for me. I learned so much that freshman year in regards to myself and, coming out of my shell a little bit.
We like talking about finding your role in the team. You were talking about being put down the outfield and like, well, this is a weird thing for me. Can you talk about how important it is to figure out what your role is early and then be good at that role? I'm sure you had many situations like that, but if you could talk about that, because I think a lot of people miss that. And, if coaches don't start me or, a coach didn't play me the second half of the game, like, a lot of kids don't realize that they have a role in the team. They just, and they're important. They just don't know why yet.
Yeah. I was thrown into leadoff and, I found myself with a lot of pressure to, at least perform well in that first at bat, because we had so much momentum with that first at bat. Everyone's heightened for the game to start. And, that first at bat that I did, whether I was, successful or not successful in the at bat, I always made sure that I made it a point to come back to the dugout with, my head high. And I was like, you know what, she's got a curveball, make sure that we're working that, or she's got a changeup. I was trying to almost instill confidence in my team that, yes, I failed, but we got this girl. And that was sort of my role in terms of offensively. I wanted to make sure that, even though I failed in the moment, they weren't like, oh crap, she failed, now I'm going to fail or something like that. And, I didn't want it to snowball. So I think that was really important that I did anyway.
I think that's important because I always talk about every leadoff, like the kids I coach, especially the older level, 16, 18U, is everybody who starts an inning off's a leadoff hitter. So you've kind of going to set the tone for the rest of the inning. Are you going to go over there and roll over on the first pitch and come pouting back to the dugout? Or are you going to grind in at bat? Or are you going to do something to give your team a spark? So being that leadoff hitter as the road team, you go out there, you're taking the first pitch generally just to see what it's like. And there's a lot of pressure that comes from that role, especially being a slapper and things like that. How did a shy kid take on that pressure and not be overcome by it? That's what I want to know, because me and Dan know several young girls that kind of fit that mold a little bit, afraid to kind of be that leader, afraid to maybe, take on that leadership role. So how did you manage to overcome it and not let it consume you through the failures that come with playing, softball or baseball?
Yeah. I wasn't a thinker player. I was very much a doer. And, I wasn't so wrapped up in, oh, she has this pitch or that pitch. I was more so like, let's just see ball, hit ball. Like I was very basic. But I think my teammates definitely helped me overcome, and they kind of helped me shift into that leadership role. I remember a senior when I was a freshman literally said to me, she's like, if you don't talk, we're going to lose. You're not helping us, and, it's like extreme and it's scary for me at the time. But looking back, I'm so grateful for those people and teammates that put effort into me so that I was able to then, rebound and put effort back to them, because it is so important. If somebody's off, if somebody's not communicating, if somebody comes in with their head down, that takes energy away from what's important. And that's the team, that's the game. And, you don't want that negative energy surrounding you anyway.
So you learn to be a leader, you learn to speak up, you learn to, own your mistakes and try to root on the rest of your team. You're building these qualities that coaches have. Coaches have to own their mistakes and still move on and be that positive person. How did you land your first gig, and how did it go?
How did I land my first gig, like coaching?
Yep.
Yeah. So when I graduated, I was talking to my head coach at the time, KJ, and I almost called her the full, I was like, oh, that's weird. I never call her Carrie, but KJ, I was talking to her, and, I asked her, I said, hey, I think I want to stick around coaching. I really don't have I don't know what I want to do next. I know I want to go to school. I was going to be a mental health counselor in my brain, and I was like, I want to get a master's. Providence has a master's program. That's something that I want to do, but, there was no slot for coaching at Providence. And she actually wanted me to stay so badly that she went to the AD and she actually created a role for me to stay on the team. They actually created a position for me. So that was really, I'm so grateful for her to allow me to stay and, for me to still be a part of my team and to stay on campus, because I wasn't ready as a senior to leave yet. I wanted to stay, and that was one of my favorite places on earth is Providence, and I was really grateful for that opportunity to stay.
Can you talk real quick about how important the education side of college sports is? Dan just actually, I didn't even know about it, but Cincinnati apparently, I guess, dropped their soccer team because of everything that's happening. And I'm sure that, sports across the country, all these, unless you're major Division I and you have a big revenue stream, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of downstream impacts to athletes and scholarship money and those things probably over the next year, at least or two. I would think it's probably going to have multiple years of impact here. But can you talk about how important the educational fit is when it comes to college, and then being a coach and trying to find, athletes that fit into, the programs that your school offers?
Yeah. I mean, even before all this happened, there's more academic money in softball than there is athletic anyway. And I think that's a common misconception that, I'm not going to try hard in high school because I'm just going to go on athletic scholarship, when in reality, all this money and all this opportunity is surrounding academics. So it's so important when you're in high school to keep up with your academics. And, I don't want to be the stay in school kid, but literally that is where your chance to get to these teams are. And if I'm a coach and I have two equal athletes and, they're equal playing wise, but one comes with some academic and the other one doesn't, then I'm going with the kid that does, because that's less money that I have to put into that kid. And I can go find another kid and give them more athletic scholarship. Softball, if you're fully funded, I mean, it's not a lot of scholarship. So yeah, I think academics is huge.
That is huge. And a lot of times now, even you're in high school, we hear it all the time. The coaches, first thing they ask is, if the coach is like, hey, I got this kid, he's playing first base, he's great, he's batting this, average, whatever. What's his grades, or what's her grades? That's the first thing a college coach is going to want to look at first, because are they going to waste their time to watch a player who doesn't care about their academics? Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I want to know about I know you didn't want to leave and you loved that place. What was the transition like for you? Like, to know that, hey, I'm not taking the field right now. Like, what is that feeling like? What was that? Was that a tough transition, or did you just fall in love with teaching?
I'm not gonna lie, like that first summer when I wasn't training to, play, that was really hard for me. I was almost like lost, like, what do I do? Instead. And, I came back in the fall ready. I put a lot of time into coaching because I wanted to stay involved. And, it was really hard to go to a practice and not have my glove on and play with my friends, because at this point, I think the hardest part of the transition was coaching my former teammates and my friends. Like, that was a really awkward thing. I can't hang out with them anymore and just watch a movie at their apartment because, that's not allowed. So to that part of it was probably the hardest. And I know you're laughing. It is,
well, I didn't even think about that aspect.
Yeah,
like,
that
I
was definitely the hardest part. I think that the playing, I'm really grateful that I was able to go back and I was able to transition out of playing that way, because I think that if I didn't do that, I would have been really lost. That
right.
that athlete identity that you lose when you stop playing in college. But yeah, I think the teammate thing was definitely the hardest piece that I had to juggle as being a coach of them.
I bet. I mean, and it's definitely a big difference considering you're just the same age essentially, or heck, there might even been a player that was a 50-year that was older than you, which is definitely tough. Now, how did you transition into what you're doing now? For our listeners who may not be familiar with the Pitching Factory, how did all of this come about for you in life and going in that direction of coaching?
Yeah. So, 2 years went by at Providence and I was coaching, and that was my grad school, and I graduated and I realized, I'm going to go back home. I'm going to pursue what I went to school for. That's just what I wanted to do. I went back home and I ended up needing one more year for my master's. So I went to Caldwell University just to get that under my belt. And I was like, what else can I do? And I found, a local facility that was near Caldwell, and that was the Pitching Factory. And this awesome guy, Mike Murphy, ran it and became really close with Mike. He was really nice. He gave me kids to start off with, because I had to, start a brand now in New Jersey. A lot of people knew me up in Providence as being the coach, and nobody knew me in New Jersey as being a coach. So it took a few months to build up like clientele with that. And then at one point he looks at me and he goes, Kik, I'm selling. I have to get out of here. He has so many businesses, and he was overwhelmed, and he's like, I can't do it all anymore. I can't do this for fun business anymore. And I went to my family and I was like, hey guys, like, this has always been a dream of ours. Like, we should take this place. And that's what ended up happening. And it kind of just like weird again, how things worked out for us. But, this role that now I'm in, co-managing the facility with my family, instructing, and, the whole business aspect has been like a really fun learning curve, because now you're a part of the game in even a completely different way as you were when you first started.
Now, I'd love to know, because, for some businesses, obviously this is like the worst thing that could have ever happened to their business. Some businesses are thriving.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's businesses that could do both. They were shut down, but now they can deliver. But with the business that you're in, you're lucky enough you can also do it online. So what has it done to your business so far since this COVID-19 outbreak has happened? And what have you been doing to stay productive? Are you doing online lessons all day long? How's that going? And how important is it for people to, reach out to people and look into doing online lessons?
Yeah. It was weird when we were talking about, the possibility of shutting down. We had just taken over last June, and to have one winter time when you're kind of, have such a small time in the year when you're kind of raising all of your funds for the rest of the year for dead time, because no one's coming to a facility in the summer. They're playing, they're outside. So we had such a great year. We started with less than 5 instructors in the place. We now have 23. We've built so much. We have so many programs, so many clinics. And we are so lucky to have so many instructors still willing to, offer themselves for online lessons, to donate their time. I mean, we have so many people just creating Instagram pages, throwing drills on just so kids have something to do at home. We just paired up with the American Cancer Society to do all these free training videos for them. We raised about $3,000 for them. That's how we chose to stay busy in terms of everything that's going on, because, it's hard for us, but you have to take a step back and say, this is way harder for the athletes right now and going through it. What can we do to help them in terms of this? Because there's nothing like what's going on right now, and nobody knows how to handle it. No one was prepared for it. So I think that the athletes are number one for us. So we want to try to make sure that they're taken care of.
And how are the athletes holding up? I'm sure you're getting emails. I'm sure from the lessons we see all the posts online, the seniors, it's terrible. It's heartbreaking. Everybody's losing the season. But how are the athletes that you're working with? If you have 23 instructors, I can't imagine how many athletes you have, but how are they holding up through all of this? Because as athletes, most are creatures of habit, and most kind of love routine and get into that routine. And now their routine is wrecked. So how are they holding up with this going on?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, I reached out. I was really trying to not go online and not do online lessons because I didn't think that it was going to take more than 2 weeks. I thought 2 weeks, then we'll be back. So that to me is so impersonal. I felt at the time that I was like, how can I shift to that after, I'm in person constantly. How can I shift to that? And when 2 week mark hit and then, you're watching the news and you're like, what do I have to do? Because the athletes right now are the ones suffering and they're the ones not doing anything. So I did offer the online lessons, and I would say about half of my athletes responded positively and decided to jump on. And every single one thought that it was a great lesson, and that made me feel good because the last thing I want to do is give a poor quality lesson to them. But some of them started with not even talking softball. It started with, how do we find a routine for you that you're going to be sane with, like how do we keep you active? What do we have to do? So some of them just, I'm talking to them like you guys are talking to me, and it was, at 9 o'clock, we're going to go for a run. At 10 o'clock, we're going to stretch. We're going to work a stretching progression just so that they have some sort of routine. And even with school was so up and down. Like when, is there a time in between school that we can get you active? So it was about creating a new routine for them for sure.
Yeah, it's got to be so difficult. I know Tyler and we both have kids that are used to playing sports, multiple sports, just because we got winter workouts with baseball and softball while they're playing basketball and wrestling. And it's just insane where even as the parents, we were such busy people, and we were like, oh man, at least we have Friday. Friday was our only day to ourselves. And now it's just like, man, I want to get back to that. Like I love being with my, don't get me wrong, this is great. I'm having a great time. But it's just like, I'm missing the sport. I'm missing watching them excel in it. And it was fun being a parent as a coach and also on the sidelines. All those things, it's just a shame. But what you were talking about with talking through things with people, I'm sure when you're in, with going to school for psychology, it probably helps out a lot with especially trying to figure out what's in the head of this teenager who is not able to play and sure she's worried or whatever it is. How much of that talking do you think is probably really helping them more than just standing up with a bat and showing them some things?
Yeah, I definitely utilize, the skills that I've learned in school with my athletes for sure. I always like to talk to them right now about, being more than a softball player. Yes, they took away the game temporarily, but they didn't take away who you are as an athlete. We're still strong. We're still powerful. We're still hardworking and determined people. COVID-19 didn't take that away from us. They took gameplay away from us, and we're bigger than that. We can still work hard. We can still self-train. We can still be motivated because that's who we are, and that can't be taken away from us by anything. So, talking through that with them, trying to change their mindset because the game will come back eventually. And, are these athletes going to be physically ready for it? Are they going to be mentally ready for it? I'm almost like so scared of what's going to happen when they do hit the field again, because it's going to be like dynamite. These kids the passion is like re-sparked with these kids, I think. And, a lot of things that don't matter that they think of, oh, practice is hot, I don't want to be at practice, or, a lot of thoughts that run through athletes' heads all the time, has become, I just want to play. And that is the greatest gift that this weird time has almost given us, and that's the silver lining in it. So kind of switching that athlete's mindset for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is the ultimate Control-Alt-Delete in life, right? I mean, I don't think anything, 9/11 was kind of a reset, but it was nothing like this. That was just kind of, New York was hit and the other areas. It was terrible. It was heartbreaking to watch on TV, but this is everywhere. This is no matter where you're at, no matter where you're living, we're all in this crazy bubble. This isn't a hurricane that hit Florida or an earthquake in California. This is everywhere. It's insane. So one thing that they, like you said, athletes are going to come out fired up, ready to go. I'm just wondering, what athletes that have taken the time to actually get back to drill work and those things, as opposed to playing game, and no practices, what that impact may have on the game moving forward. I mean, have you given it any thought?
Yeah, I think for sure it's going to delay the game in a lot of ways. You have a lot of athletes, a lot of hitters not seeing live pitching. You have a lot of pitchers not pitching to live batters. You have not had a team defensive practice in weeks, and it's going to be months. And you know, the sad thing is that the shift is going to all happen together. And the game of softball, you know, it's sad to say it might take a giant step back skill wise and development wise, because you know these athletes are so restricted in their houses. And you know, what equipment do these athletes have at home? What space do they have? Do they have anybody to help them? You know, like what access do these athletes have to even work? Are they working hard? Do they have the motivation? Because you know, to lose a high school season is one thing, but then to lose the travel ball, you know, where even if you're in a critical recruiting year, that can be devastating. And to work so hard over a year and then to not have that competition in the spring and then the summer and then the fall, how much can athletes take?
You know, you were talking about how you know, when this finally comes back and all this built up passion just getting ready to take the field. Not only is this, I think, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be athletes too that, you know, didn't take advantage of this time and get better and stay sharp and all that stuff. And you're going to see that, and that you'll be able to pick those people out. There'll be people passing people that, you know, were supposed to be starting this year, you know, and there'll be someone else starting in their position. But the other thing I was thinking about too is look at us as spectators. It's when the sport comes back, you're going to have more grandmas and everybody on the sidelines watching tournament ball because they haven't been able to watch it, you know, all season. You know, it'd be something when the Women's College World Series is back on, they're probably going to get views they've never had before because the amount of time, you know, it was missed, you know, from this year. So I think there's going to be a lot of negatives to it, but man, if you really look at those positives that could happen from it, you know, it could be a nice boost for, you know, this sport for every sport. You never know. So cool way to look at it.
Kiki, one thing I wanted to ask you here, obviously before this happened, a lot of people out there are scared to get into doing lessons, scared to get on doing one-on-ones or privates, or those players that don't really know how to break things down to another, like they know how to play the game, they understand the game, they don't know how to explain the game. What would you say to those people that maybe are thinking about, you know, that were thinking about doing lessons, that were thinking about opening a facility? What advice would you give them?
Like on the coaching side, like instructors that are, you know, I think that it's really great to shadow instructors. When I first started giving lessons up at Providence, I shadowed a lot of hitting lessons and I shadowed a lot of slapping lessons because I never really, you know, experienced the game on that side. What to watch, what are you kind of, how do you even like gear a lesson? How do you like, you know, format it? What's the format look like? You know, are you spending 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here? And, you know, I think that shadowing is huge and seeing if you like it, starting with clinics and things that aren't as permanent. I view lessons as something that's more permanent because you're going to be seeing that kid every week. It's not a one and done. Clinics are more one and done. So I like to pull a lot of new instructors in with clinics with me so that they can kind of just, it's very low key. You're kind of mixing with a lot of athletes, and you know, that's a great way to get into it. And then when you do want to be more serious, then you can pick up a few kids and try it out. But you know, you do grow faster than you think you grow. So I always make sure I tell young instructors or new instructors coming in saying, you know, make sure that you're okay a few weeks in with 3 kids, and then you pick up 3 more kids, then you make sure you're good for a few more weeks, because you know, the last thing that a kid wants to do is learn an instructor, you learn the kid, and then you're saying, you know what, I need to pull back from my schedule. I have to drop this kid. And then they have to process it.
Now, I'm curious, Kiki, what types of, are you one that likes to use like video analysis and like video your batters so you can really break it down for them so they can actually see and feel what's going on? Do you also use, what other tools do you use? Do you use any type of like anything to, you know, catch the bat speed or anything like that?
Yeah, I never really was a numbers person, and again, I coach the way that I played. I'm less of a thinker, and more of a just a doer and a feeler. So it depends on the athlete that I have, though. I have an athlete that has, that last thing. That is so loud. I have that's like, I hate when the computer gets the phone call.
Everyone grabbed for their phones.
Oh my God, I'm like.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, right. A lot of I don't even know what it's called. It goes on the end of your bat, blast
Motion.
yeah. I have athletes who come in with that, and I think that the numbers are interesting. But I teach the way that I played, and that was feeling. So, how are you feeling? How do you feel this? Do you feel that? Like, I want athletes to leave me I don't want athletes to have me anymore. I want them to feel things and see things happening and say, oh, I pulled open on that, or I stepped out, so then I pulled open. But I do utilize video a lot. It depends on the athlete, if they're going to overanalyze themselves, and I won't. But if they're not feeling it or not seeing it correctly, or they're like, I don't feel myself pulling out, but they're whipping out, then I'll show them the video and say, like, look, this is where you are. This is where you need to be. So it depends on the athlete, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you. You don't want to get in their head too much, for sure. One thing I do want to ask is, where do you? I forget how I want to say this. Where do you see younger athletes struggling the most? Where do you think coaches that maybe they're coaching 10, 12-year-old girls in softball, 14 maybe, where do they spend more time helping these kids get more prepared to compete at a more elite level as they get older?
Yeah, I think just learning, the concept of the game and, the strategy behind it is huge. And that young level, the fundamentals will come with practice, but, molding a team together, where are you going to go on the play? You want to develop the softball IQ as much as you can. And I think that is kind of, not viewed as so important at that level. Everyone's fundamentals, everyone's drilling, and it's great because they need that. Trust me. And I think a lot of coaches need to take a step back. I get a lot of instructors coming to me if they have young athletes saying, I tell her the same, we do the same thing every lesson. I feel bad. I feel like it's boring, but she's not getting it. I have to say it 100 times. And I said, my answer is always, you're going to have to say it 100 more times. Like, athletes need that reinforcement, and coming up with, different drills. You can have 10 drills, but it's keeping that front shoulder down every single different drill just to change it up. But it's all, reinforcing that one aspect of their swing. But yeah, I think the game strategy is huge at that age too.
Now, we've asked a bunch of questions, but before we move on to the last few, was there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to kind of shed light on for our listeners?
I mean, not really. I think that, right now athletes need to stay motivated in any way they can, reaching out to their coaches, because coaches are so bored right now. And I think a lot of athletes are like, I don't want to reach out. Like, I don't want to get a workout. Coaches right now are so ready to put their energy into their team that I think reaching out to coaches, asking questions, can I do a conditioning, workout with you? Like, just creating things for them to do is huge. And I think that athletes have to have that confidence. Like, I'm going to ask them, and coaches, are responding great from what I can see. I see so many people posting drills, doing motivational talks on Zooms with everybody. So I think that's important. Yeah.
Awesome. One thing we always like to ask, because we think that it kind of takes things full circle in a way. Now that you've been through high school, college playing, college coaching, running, being an instructor, having a facility, if you could go back and tell your teenage self anything, what advice would you give yourself looking back at it?
My advice would be, like, nothing matters besides the passion and the people that you're around. The game matters, and that is really the only thing that matters. You get so caught up in the numbers and the stats and the articles and anything that is external around you. And I think a lot of athletes lose sight of just the game and just the people that you're surrounded with. Like, I would give anything right now to just sit in the dugout with my teammates before practice, putting on our cleats and just talking about our weeks. Like, those things, those moments that, I cherish now and I cherish then. And I would tell athletes to, keep in mind that, those won't be there all the time.
That's awesome. Now, what about you were talking about all the distractions around, and especially today? I mean, there's more and more apps. There's more and more social media. There's more things that you could, join, become a group of, and all this stuff. And there's a lot of things out there. And, with you playing softball at the level you did, there's a lot of other people out there that are maybe not playing as high a level. Or maybe they are. Maybe they're on TV and they're at the Women's College World Series. How do you, what do you say to kids out there and teenagers and college players right now that really do focus on what they say, the other people say, people online, on Twitter, on what, whatever, Sports Center. What do you say to those people that are really focused on that stuff?
Yeah, it is so hard. And this is a lesson I learned, throughout college. I did get wrapped up in the numbers throughout college. And it wasn't until I had a season-ending injury my junior year that I realized, like, the only thing I care about right now is just being on the field. Like, that's the only thing that I want. And then I think learning that lesson that way was really important. And that's what I try to preach to the athletes and anybody who's wrapped up in those things that, when the game is taken away from you, when your career's over, when you have an injury or, anything that could happen to prevent you from playing, the only thing that you want to do after, and the only thing you care about, the only thing you even remember is, the teammates, the moments that you have with them, just going onto the field, running your heart out on the field and playing, and just because it's fun, or going to the field and having a catch with your dad. These little things that, that are way bigger and way more important and will be more important when the game isn't with you anymore in that way.
It's awesome. I love
Excellent.
it. What would be some of your goals that you'd like to accomplish in the next 3 to 5 years, whether that be with the facility or for yourself personally?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about this like every day of this quarantine because, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on the future, but definitely with the facility, I would love to keep building that. My parents are involved right now, and I can see myself in a few years maybe taking it over as a solo gig. So that would be really cool. I want to get out more of the facility. I want to take our instructors out to fields and out to practices. And, that's where a lot of defensive practices happen. So I want to maybe do a little more outreach in the community that way. That would be really cool. And yeah, I guess do more fun things like this, things that, push me out of my comfort zone a little bit. Yeah, that's what I would do.
Excellent. Now, I forgot to give you a head start on this one. Normally, before we start recording, I give you a head start just to give you some ideas. But so now I'm going to put you on the spot. If you could recommend us reach out to anybody to interview on this podcast, because this podcast, all we've done, our goal is to connect people with great stories and people with great knowledge that we don't have, because we didn't play as far, and we're obviously not females either. But we always like to find out who that person would be in each one of our guests' lives. So if you could recommend anybody for us to reach out to have on the show to give value to our listeners, who would that person be?
That person would 100% be Julianne Verka. She was one of my teammates at Providence. She was so successful there. I coached her, I played with her. And then she went on to coach in Chicago, and she did well there. And her head coach actually departed from the team. I don't really know the story, but she ended up taking the head coaching role as a first-time coach. So she had to learn a lot along the way, and she just got accepted. She's moving to New Jersey. She just got accepted to be a Wilson rep. So, I mean, she had a really cool and interesting journey. So definitely her. I can give you her contact information after, but she's a fun story.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good story. Yeah, we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
One thing I wanted to ask here, we just got like another couple questions, but I know you've done several camps and clinics and different things like that from, like college recruiting camps and stuff like that. Do you have any idea of what you got coming up as a makeup, I guess, if you've missed anything or anything like that you want to let people know about, that once this clears, that hopefully, you can let people come back to the facility?
Yeah, me and another instructor, Kayla Lombardo, she played at Fordham, coached at Lehigh. We put together this recruiting conference to, share this information with parents and athletes about, just to, again, ease those anxieties. And we had one, it was so successful that we were putting together another one May 3rd, and we just shifted it to online. So it's still up. You still can register.
All right, awesome. Like I said, I knew that I'd seen that posted, and I wasn't sure if it was changed, canceled, whatever. So thanks for following up on that one. For our listeners who may not be familiar with you or anything like that, where can people find you online, your website, or an email if they want to reach out to you, and get more information on what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, kikibaldassari.softball. That's the same as the email, kikibaldassari.softball@gmail.com. And yeah, the pitchingfactory.com is our website for the facility. You can reach me anywhere.
Awesome. Kiki, I really appreciate you coming on. I think you've given so much information for our listeners. It's very valuable information, especially now in the downtime. I hope a lot of people got a lot from it. I'm sure they did. I want to ask this question. This is one of my favorite questions to ask because I feel that music brings out who the person is on the inside, especially in a situation where you want to dominate or do your best. So with that being said, if you had one at bat in a professional softball game, what song would you choose as your walk-up song to the plate?
I would choose the walk-up song I had my senior year because it was the best one. It was Good Vibrations, Marky Mark, and it was so fun, and it pumped everybody up, and it had a great vibe, and I love that song.
That's a good
Classic.
jam. I just picture in my head like jock jams from like 1996.
Yes.
Oh my
like
God.
that.
I loved it.
Back there. That's awesome. Good choice.
I'm not intimidated,
Yes.
so I had to have something fun.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
That is fun.
It's funny. I have in my head, because we always do walkout songs for the month, and we always do a playlist of every guest we had on, all the songs that they choose, and then Tyler and I choose 2 new ones every single month. And mine go from like the most evil sounding hard metal rock ever to like something.
What was last month?
Like from the 1930s or something. Like I'm just back and forth. Don't worry, be happy. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think that's awesome. I love it. And let me see if I got it on here.
Yes.
All right.
Doesn't get any better than that. That's for sure.
I'm getting like heart rate. My heart rate's spiking. I feel like going for a bat right now.
There you go.
That's why we do it.
Love it.
Kiki, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And we wish you the best of luck, especially in these crazy times right now. And we look forward to watching your journey and then following up with you and get you back on here.
Yeah, of course. Whenever you need me.
Yeah, and we got to make a trip to Jersey. I think we had to come check the place out.
You guys gonna come to Jersey?
It's not too far. We can handle that in a car ride.
Yeah.
Just not right now.
Not right now.
6 feet apart.
Yes.
Definitely. Thank you,
Awesome.
Kiki. Really appreciate it. Best of luck to you.
No problem.
Thank you. See ya.